Hi, Kat.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Kanavos show on New Earth TV, and I'm your host and a 3-time breast cancer survivor who was the author of Dreams That Can Save Your Life, written with Dr. Larry Burke. If you want to learn more about that, go to my Facebook page or my website at KathleenO'KeefeCanavos.com. Did you know that there is over 90% of the population has some form of autoimmune disease and inflammation, and women are diagnosed with 80% of over 145 identified autoimmune diseases, and that number is rising all the time. Our guest tonight is author Dr. Keesha Ewers, one of the 50 million women who received an autoimmune diagnosis. Welcome to the show, Dr. Keesha Ewers.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to come and talk about this amazing subject that's so important for people to hear about.
Oh, it is. And you know, one of the things that I think is most interesting, and we're going to get into this a little later in the show, is how important our childhood is and part of this puzzle. So before we get there, though, I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about your story, because you were diagnosed with an autoimmune system illness.
I was. Yes, thank you. So it's a really interesting thing, because when my patients come in and see me, they say, all of a sudden, I got sick, right? All of a sudden, I felt fatigued, or all of a sudden, I had this disease. And that's exactly how I experienced it. But in fact, it's not all of a sudden. It takes anywhere from 10 to 30 years to develop a full-blown adult autoimmune disease. So it's not all of a sudden at all. You know, you've been working on this, and the people that are listening to us right now, I want you to kind of sit with that for a minute, because you could be cooking one up right now. And the great news is like me, after I was diagnosed with mine, I was able to reverse it within 6 months. We turn that around before you ever get diagnosed. So we'll talk about some of those red flags to look for, so that we can turn the bus around. But for me, I was a marathon runner. I'd been a skydiver. I was raising 4 children. I had a pretty high intensity medical career, working in intensive care units. I loved that adrenaline junkie kind of thing. And my friends called me the Energizer Bunny. So one day, all of a sudden, I woke up and I had 10 extra pounds on me and puffiness, just like puff, puff, puff all over my body. My joints were red and inflamed, and it was like someone had taken the batteries out of the Energizer Bunny, and I could not move. I just had nothing in the tank. And I got myself in to see a doctor, and I was diagnosed with this autoimmune disease called rheumatoid arthritis. And when I asked, you know, how in the world did I get an autoimmune disease? Because here I am eating so well, running marathons, you know, I think I'm super healthy. And my doctor said, well, it just so happens that you drew the short end of the genetic lottery, because my grandfather had RA. And so that was it. Book closed, right? It's over. You have this genetic propensity for it. You've got it. And now here are 2 prescriptions, you know, that she wrote out and tore off and gave to me. One was for methotrexate, which is for cancer. And another is a very strong non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. And I'm thinking, isn't there anything else I can do? And she said, no. And I said, diet? I'll do anything, you know. And she said, nope, that has nothing to do with any of it. When you get worse, not if you get worse, come back and we're going to advance you to another classification of drugs, a stronger one that will actually affect your immune system, immune modulators. This that I got, you know, 23 years ago is the exact same thing people are hearing today. It hasn't even changed in 23 years. Same drugs, same rhetoric, same understanding that, well, it's genetic, nothing you can do, right? In the general standard medical community of rheumatologists. And, you know, it's actually not accurate, not true. And it took me to the internet, this understanding that there's got to be something. I do not want the side effect profile of methotrexate and these big, heavy, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. I want my 4 kids to be raised by a mom that they're used to, right? That has a lot of energy, not this kind of flattened blob that I had just all of a sudden become. So I found an article that linked yoga an autoimmune disease very positively. And I thought, oh, well, and this is how conservative I was. I actually called my running partners and I said, I'm going to my first yoga class. I've never hung out with people that chant before. I'm really nervous. I don't even know if I can touch my toes. So it's completely ego driven. And, it was, of course, the best thing that ever happened to me. I walked into my first yoga class and, of course, the yoga teacher said, the usual. I became a yoga teacher later. And, what you say is leave your ego at the door, pay attention to your own practice, go inward, don't worry about what everyone else is doing. And it was just so fantastic to drop into that amazing space of just being. And during that first yoga class, he mentioned this word Ayurveda, which is the sister science of yoga. It's the medical arm of yoga, you could say. It intrigued me enough, just a couple words he said, that I went home and I started looking that up on the computer. And what I found is this Ayurvedic medicine, this framework from India that was 10,000 years old, they had this understanding that we are not all the same person. All those years ago, they had this understanding that we're not all the same person, and that food pyramid that we were all raised on is just completely not accurate. And that was new to me, very revolutionary to me. I was so steeped in Western science. And so I started with just these baby steps of understanding my own dosha or body type, the way that I process stress, the way that I process information, the way I'm supposed to eat for my own body type. And I started doing it. And then I went a little deeper and a little deeper and a little deeper. And within 6 months, my rheumatoid arthritis was gone, and it hasn't been back in 23 years.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I wonder if I'm the one that's echoing, or are you? Am I echoing? I guess our producer, she's amazing, fixed it. But I would like to see, Keesha, if I could get you to move over a little closer toward your dog. We've been watching your dog in the background, and you're a little further over here, so we can't really see part of. They're perfect. Okay, wonderful. Your dog is adorable. Yes. So before we go any further, I really, I agree with what you said, how the doctors will, in conventional medicine, they give us pills for everything. Mm-hmm. And, there's never this idea of this is going to be temporary. You're going to get over this. You're going to be well. You're going to be cured. You're going to go back with your life. I remember when I told my doctors that I was cured of cancer, I was done. They said, well, cancer's never cured. And, you're just in remission. And I said, when you get over a cold, are you just in remission, or are you cured of that cold? And they said, well, yeah, you're kind of cured of the cold. And I said, okay, I'm cured of this cancer. If I get cancer back, it's going to be a different one, and it's not coming back. And that was 25 years ago. So, or rather 15 years ago, the second time. So
I will say though, that actually I kind of agree with the doctors that say there isn't a cure with autoimmune disease. And, another one of my colleagues is actually the one that pointed this out, because I used to say I was cured of it. And he said, if you went back to eating the way that you ate back then, because I was a complete sugar addict, if you went back to the way that you processed stress, which I would put on a pair of running shoes and run 20 miles, would you get your RA back? And the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. So I would say, yes, I could actually, because it is in my genetic, DNA makeup, that if I were to do the things that made that gene manifest again, it's there. If I want it to come back, I could make it come back pretty easily. So I would say that there's another word between remission and cure, right? That it just means that I'm friends with my genetics now. Right. And it's not cured. It's not in remission. It's that I'm aware and I'm observant and more actualized with my genetics, that I'm friends with my body. I listen to it now. I can hear its feedback, so that there isn't any more all of a sudden, I'm getting the warning signs along the way when I get out of balance, and then I pay attention and I do what my body's asking me to do. And so I would say maybe a different word would be really appropriate, because I could very easily get my RA to come back.
Mm-hmm. But I understand that, but you're not going to do that. No. So let's talk about what is autoimmunity, because some of our listeners right now, we're live on Facebook and they're tweeting me or Facebooking me, and they want to know, what is autoimmunity? What does that mean?
Yeah, so autoimmune means actually you're attacking you. Your immune system is attacking you. And when I started studying yoga and I learned how to meditate, one day I was sitting in meditation and that word autoimmunity started dancing across my third eye space, right? In my mind's eye, autoimmune. I started really looking at that and I thought, oh, that's so interesting. Auto, that means I am attacking me. My immune system has gone after me. Why is it that I'm trying to kill myself? Because in effect, what I really understood is that this is me committing suicide in a societally acceptable way. And I thought, wow, when's the first time I wanted to die? And that was a really important, very important question to ask. Not how do I get out of my suffering as quickly as possible, which is usually the question we ask ourselves, but why is it here, right? And what am I meant to learn from this? So I went backwards in my meditation, kind of like followed this golden breadcrumb trail backwards. And I got to this 10-year-old little girl part of myself who was being sexually abused by my vice principal in my elementary school. And I thought, oh my gosh, Ayurveda says that autoimmune disease is undigested anger. Of course, I've actually never even felt anger about this. It got put into my body and stored there because it was undigested. It wasn't dealt with in a way that allowed it to actually leave my cells. And so when I was 10, I really did feel like I wanted to die. I felt like this planet wasn't a safe place and people in authority couldn't be trusted. And so our brains are not fully developed up here until we're 26 years old. Our prefrontal cortex, the impulse control part, the executive function is not fully developed until we're 26. So whatever happens before that in childhood, whatever our experiences are, we're actually observing them from a very self-centric stage of life. And we're going to make up meanings and beliefs about those events, especially stressful ones, that are going to be self-centered. So in my case, it was, I have to be perfect to even survive. Because I'm in school when Unicom goes off, right, and calls me to the vice principal's office, and he tells me it's my fault because I'm a bad kid. So of course, as a 10-year-old, I'm going to say, oh my gosh, I have to be perfect. And so I became a perfectionist. And I see that a lot of people with autoimmune disease, I would even venture to say that every one of my patients with autoimmune disease has a pretty strong streak of perfectionism. And some undigested anger in there that they're not aware of. And so that's a big piece of the healing process, is really getting underneath that. So asking what autoimmunity is an amazing question, because it's more than, I talk about your immune system being an archer with a bow and arrow. And in standard Western model of medicine, we always deal with the target that the arrow is going toward. And so if it's your thyroid, then we just talk about your thyroid. But we're not actually talking about who's taking the arrow and letting it go from the bow. When you have one autoimmune disease, you're 75% at risk for getting another and another and another. And it's not because you're just falling apart. It's because we're not actually going up to the archer and tapping him on the shoulder and saying, hey, can you put your bow and arrow down, please? And can we stop attacking ourselves here? So that's the piece that I call the missing piece of the puzzle. And so that's why my book's called Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle.
So how can we find your book?
Amazon, actually, best way. You can get on my website too, which is drkeesha.com, drkeesha.com. But really, honestly, Amazon, right there. So,
Great.
Yeah.
Well, one other question that came in here on Facebook. I've got both my pad and my cell phone here, and they're all coming in. They wanted to know how they could actually get in touch with you.
drkeesha.com. There's a place on there to apply to become a patient. And then I have a lot of programs there too. I have the Academy for Integrative Medicine Health Coach Certification Program, and I teach people who are passionate about getting to root cause of diseases to become health coaches, integrative medicine health coaches. And in the process, you get to heal. It's a transpersonal program. So you get my mentorship and you get to learn how to do the functional medicine laboratory testing that I do. And you learn the protocols for it and this emotional healing component that's so vital that gets left behind. Even in functional medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, people give it lip service, but don't actually provide tools. And so you learn all of that. So if you want to actually make a career out of this, if you're what I call a summit junkie, right? We have so much information on the internet these days. I have patients that are smarter than most doctors because they watch summits and they go and they look at blogs and they just need to know how to personalize it for themselves. And so I teach that, or you can become work with me one-to-one, or I also have different programs online that you can do as do-it-yourself.
Great. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show tonight. We have just run out of time. It went so quickly. So I do hope you'll come back on again sometime and we can talk about this a little bit more and why you chose to write this book for women. But thank you so much for Dr. Keesha Ewers for being on the show with us tonight. And for all of you listening in, tune in again next Tuesday night, same time, same place. Kathleen O'Keefe Kanavos Facebook page where we'll be going live. Until then, good night, everyone.
Thank you.